Blessed love and peace. This is the weekly recitation of Tobadi Kukadao, portion numero 12, Vayechi. And that includes from Torah, Parsha Vayechi, which is Bereshit 47 a Bereshit 47:28 a 50:26. From the Chandogya Upanishad, it is Kanda 2, verse 1 a 7. From the Bhagavad Gita, it is the Bhakti Yogehe, numero 12. From the Tao Te Ching, it is numero 12. From Lun Yu, it is 12. From the Digha Nikaya, it is the Potapada Sutta, numero 9. From the Dhammapada, it is the Attavaga, numero 12. From the Gospels, it is Matthew, chapters 23 a 24. And from the Quran, it is Surah Yusuf, numero 12. And from the Sri Guru Granth Sahib, it is verses 2 a 11. Bismillah ar-Rahmani ar-Rahim. Allah wabham. Dao ka dao, fe chong dao, ming ka ming, fe chong ming. Ja, Rastafari. Deus noster qui es in cielo sanctificato nomen tuum, Vaheguru Sanam. Baruch ata Elohim, Eloheinu melech haolam, Borei peri hagafen. Amen. Baruch ata Elohim, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher katzanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu l'sok b'davai Torah. Amen. Kyrie eleison, sivamastu save jigatahim, sabe sata bhavantu sukhitata. Vagabiyam. Aquaba upendo na amani. Fakiri inisalami, chinta dam peramian, labor vamir, woman jaka. Ubuntu, shobono, fakitka. Shishem. Kamasudina, Domo Arigato, Pilama, Yela Wakan Tonka, Toka Dokashin Gun, Gomendagan. God, we thank you for all that you bless us. Ata Jamya Yata Afanami. Bado, Aho, Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Amen. Torah, Vayechi. And Yaakov lived in the land of Egypt for 17 years, and Yaakov's days, the years of his life, were 147 years. When the time drew near for Israel to die, he called his son Joseph and said to him, "If I have now found favor in your eyes, now place your hand beneath my thigh, and you shall deal with me with loving kindness and truth. Do not bury me now in Egypt. I will lie with my forefathers, and you shall carry me out of Egypt, and you shall bury me in their grave." And he said, "I will do as you say." And he said, "Swear to me." So he swore to him, and Israel prostrated himself on the head of the bed. Now it came to pass after these incidents that someone said to Joseph, "Behold, your father is ill." So he took his 2 sons with him, Manasseh and Ephraim. And someone told Yaakov and said, "Behold, your son Joseph is coming to you." And Israel summoned his strength and sat up on the bed. And Yaakov said to Joseph, "Almighty God appeared to me in Luz in the land of Canaan, and Elohim blessed me. And Elohim said to me, Behold, I will make you fruitful and cause you to multiply, and I will make you into a congregation of peoples, and I will give this land to your seed after you for an everlasting inheritance. And now as for your 2 sons who were born to you in the land of Egypt, until I came to you, to the land of Egypt they are mine. Ephraim and Manasseh shall be mine like Reuben and Shimon. But your children, if you beget any after them, shall be yours by their brothers' names. They shall be called in their inheritance. As for me, when I came from Padan, Rachel died to me in the land of Canaan on the way, and when there was still a stretch of land to come to Ephrath, and I buried her there on the way to Ephrath, which is Bethlehem. Then Israel saw Joseph's sons, and he said, Who are these? Joseph said to his father, They are my sons, whom Elohim gave me here. So he said, Now bring them near to me, so that I may bless them. Now Israel's eyes had become heavy with age, to the extent that he could not see. So he drew them near to him, and he kissed them and embraced them. And Israel said to Joseph, I had not expected to see even your face, and behold, Elohim has shown me your children too. Joseph took them out from upon his Yaakov's knees, and he prostrated himself to the ground. And Joseph took them both, Ephraim at his right from Israel's left, and Manasseh at his left from Israel's right, and he brought them near to him. But Israel stretched out his right hand and placed it on Ephraim's head, although he was the younger, and his left hand he placed on Manasseh's head. He guided his hands deliberately, for Manasseh was the firstborn. And he blessed Joseph and said, Elohim, before whom my fathers Abraham and Yitzhak walked, Elohim, who sustained me as long as I am alive until this day, may the angel who redeemed me from all harm bless the youths, and may they be called by my name and the name of my fathers, Abraham and Yitzhak, and may they multiply abundantly like fish in the midst of the land. And Joseph saw that his father was placing his right hand on Ephraim's head, and it displeased him, so he held up his father's hand to remove it from upon Ephraim's head, to place it on Manasseh's head. And Joseph said to his father, Not so far, for this one is the firstborn. Put your right hand on his head. But his father refused, and he said, I know, my son, I know. He too will become a people, and he too will be great. But his younger brother will be greater than he, and his children's fame will fill the nations. So he blessed them on that day, saying, With you Israel will bless, saying, May Elohim make you like Ephraim and Manasseh, and like Manasseh. And he placed Ephraim before Manasseh. And Israel said to Joseph, Behold, I am going to die, and Elohim will be with you, and Elohim will return you to the land of your forefathers. And I have given you one portion over your brothers, which I took from the hand of the Amorite with my sword and with my bow. Yaakov called for his sons, and he said, Gather, and I will tell you what will happen to you at the end of days. Gather and listen, sons of Yaakov, and listen to Israel your father. Reuben, you are my firstborn, my strength, and the first of my might. You should have been superior in rank and superior in power. You have the restlessness of water. Therefore you shall not have superiority, for you ascended upon your father's couch. Then you profaned Elohim, who ascended upon my bed. Shimon and Levi are brothers, stolen instruments are their weapons. Let my soul not enter their council, my honor you shall not join their assembly, for in their wrath they killed a man, and with their will they hamstrung a bull. Cursed be the wrath, for it is mighty. Cursed be their wrath, for it is mighty, and their anger, because it is harsh. I will separate them throughout Yaakov, and I will scatter them throughout Israel. Yehuda, as for you, your brothers will acknowledge you. Your hand will be at the nape of your enemies, and your father's sons will prostrate themselves to you. A cub and a grown lion is Yehuda. From the prey, my son, you withdrew. He crouched, rested like a lion, and like a lion, who will rouse him? The scepter shall not depart from Yehuda, nor the student of the law from between his feet, until Shiloh comes, and to him will be a gathering of peoples. He binds his fowl to a vine, and to a tendril he binds his young donkey. He launders his garment with wine, and with the blood of grapes binds his raiment. He is red-eyed from wine, and white-toothed from milk. Zebulun will dwell on the coast of the seas. He will be at the harbor of the ships, and his boundary will be at Zidon. Issachar is a bony donkey lying between the boundaries. He saw a resting place that it was beneficial, and the land that it was pleasant, and he bent his shoulder to bear burdens, and he became an indentured laborer. Dan will avenge his people like one the tribes of Israel. Dan will be a serpent on the road, a viper on the path, which bites the horse's heels, so its rider falls backwards. For your salvation I hope, O Elohim. As for Gad, a troop will troop forth from him, and it will troop back in its tracks. From Asher will come rich food, and he will yield regal delicacies. Naphtali is a swift gazelle. He is one who utters beautiful words. A charming son is Joseph, a son charming to the eye of the women. Each one strode along to see him. They heaped bitterness upon him, and became quarrelsome. Yea, archers despised him. But his bow was strongly established, and his arms were gilded from the hands of the mighty one of Yaakov. From there he sustained the rock of Israel. From Elohim of your far, and Elohim will help you, and the Almighty and Elohim will bless you with the blessings of the heavens above, the blessings of the deep lying below, the blessings of far and more. The blessings of your far surpass the blessings of my parents, the ends of the everlasting hills. May they come to Joseph's head and to the crown of the head of the one who was separated from his brothers. Benjamin is a wolf, he will prey. In the matin he will devour plunder, and in the evening he will divide the spoil. All these are the 12 tribes of Israel, and this is what their far spoke to them, and blessed them. Each man according to his blessing he blessed them. And he commanded them, and said to them, I will be brought in to my people, bury me with my fars in the cave that is in the field of Ephron the Hittite, in the cave that is in the field of Machpelah, which is before Mamre in the land of Canaan, which field Abraham bought from Ephron the Hittite for burial property. There they buried Abraham and his wife Sarah, there they buried Yitzhak and his wife Rivkah, and there I buried Leah. The purchase of the field and the cave therein was from the sons of Heth. And Yaakov concluded, commanding his sons, and he drew his legs up into the bed, and expired, and was brought in to his people. Joseph fell on his far's face, and he wept over him and kissed him. And Joseph commanded his servants, the physicians, to embalm his far, and the physicians embalmed Israel. And 40 days were completed for him, for so are the days of embalming completed, and the Egyptians wept over him for 70 days. When the days of his weeping had passed, Joseph spoke to Pharaoh's household, saying, If now I have found favor in your eyes, speak now in Pharaoh's ears, saying, My father adjured me, saying, Behold, I am going to die. In my grave, which I dug for myself in the land of Canaan, there you shall bury me. So now, please let me go up and bury my far and return. And Pharaoh said, Go up and bury your far, as he adjured you. So Joseph went up to bury his far, and all Pharaoh's servants, the elders of his house, and all the elders of the land of Egypt went up with him. And Joseph's entire household, and his brothers, and his far's household, only their young children and their flocks and cattle did they leave in the land of Goshen. And chariots and horsemen also went up with them, and the camp was very numerous. And they came to the threshing floor of the thorn bushes, which is on the other side of the Jordan, and there they conducted a very great and impressive eulogy, and he made for his far a grieving of 7 days. The Canaanites, the inhabitants of the land, saw the grieving at the threshing floor of the thorn bushes, and they said, This is an intense grieving for the Egyptians. Therefore they named it Abel Mitzrayim, Egypt grieves, which is on the other side of the Jordan. And his sons did to him just as he had commanded them. And his sons carried him to the land of Canaan, and they buried him in the cave of the field of Machpelah, which field Abraham had bought for burial property from Ephron the Hittite before Mamre. And Joseph returned to Egypt, he and his brothers, and all who had gone up with him to bury his far, and he had buried his far. Now Joseph's brothers saw that their far had died, and they said, Perhaps Joseph will hate us and return to us all the evil that we did to him. So they commanded messengers to go to Joseph to say, Your far commanded us before his death, saying, So shall you say to Joseph, Please forgive now your brother's transgression and their sin, for they did evil to you. Now please forgive the transgression of the servants of Elohim your far, of Elohim of your far. And Joseph wept when they spoke to him. His brothers also went and fell before him, and they said, Behold, we are your slaves. But Joseph said to them, Don't be afraid, for am I instead of Elohim. Indeed, you intended evil against me, but Elohim designed it for benevolence, in order to bring about what is at present to keep a great populace alive. So now do not fear, I will sustain you and your small children. And he comforted them and spoke to their hearts. So Joseph dwelt in Egypt, he and his father's household, and Joseph lived 110 years. Joseph saw children of a third generation born to Ephraim. Also the sons of Machir, the sons of Manasseh, were born on Joseph's knees. Joseph said to his brothers, I am going to die. Elohim will surely remember you and take you up out of this land to the land that Elohim swore to Abraham, to Yitzhak, and to Yaakov. And Joseph adjured the children of Israel, saying, Elohim will surely remember you, and you shall take up my bones out of here. And Joseph died at the age of 110 years, and they embalmed him, and he was placed into the coffin in Egypt. Chandogya Upanishad, Dos número Conda 2, 1 a 7. Om. Meditation on the whole of the Saman is benevolent. Whatever is benevolent, people say it is Saman, and whatever is not benevolent, people say it is not Saman. Thus people say he approached him with Saman, that is to say he approached him in a becoming manner. Again, they say he approached him without Saman, that is to say he approached him in an unbecoming manner. And they also say that truly this is Saman for us, that is to say this is benevolent for us, when it is benevolent. Again, they say truly this is not Saman for us, that is to say it is not benevolent for us, when it is not benevolent. He who knowing this meditates on the Saman as benevolent, all benevolent qualities will approach him quickly, they will accrue to him. One should meditate on the fivefold Saman as the 5 worlds. The syllable him is the earth, the Prastava, fire, the Udgita, the sky, the Pratihara, the soleil, the Nidana, heaven. This is with reference to the ascending order. Now with reference to the descending order. The syllable him is heaven, the Prastava, the soleil, the Udgita, the sky, the Pratihara, fire, the Nidana, the earth. The worlds in the ascending and descending orders belong to him who, knowing this, meditates on the fivefold Saman as the worlds. One should meditate on the fivefold Saman as rain. The syllable him is the wind that blows from the east, the Prastava is the cloud that forms, the Udgita is what rains, the Pratihara is the lightning and the thunder. The Nidana is the cessation, it rains for him whenever he desires, and he brings rain for others, even when there is no rain. Who knowing this, meditates on the fivefold Saman as rain. One should meditate on the fivefold Saman in all the waters. When the clouds gather, that is the syllable him. When it rains, that is the Prastava, the rivers which flow to the east, these are the Udgita. The rivers which flow to the west, these are the Pratihara. The ocean is Nidana. He does not die in water, and he becomes rich in water, who knowing this meditates on the fivefold Saman in all the waters. One should meditate on the fivefold Saman as the seasons. The syllable him is the spring, the Prastava, the summer, the Udgita, the rainy season, the Pratihara, the autumn, the Nidana, the winter. The seasons belong to him, and he becomes rich in seasons, who knowing this meditates on the fivefold Saman as the seasons. One should meditate on the fivefold Saman in animals. The syllable him is goats, the Prastava, sheep, the Udgita, cows, the Pratihara, horses, and the Nidana, man. Animals belong to him as objects of enjoyment, and he becomes rich in animals, who knowing this meditates on the fivefold Saman in animals. One should meditate on the fivefold Saman, which is the most excellent, as the pranas, senses. The syllable him is smell, the nose, the Prastava, speech, the tongue, the Udgita, sight, the eye, the Pratihara, hearing, the ear, the Nidana, the mind. These are each greater than the preceding. The most excellent objects belong to him, nay, he conquers the most excellent worlds, who, knowing this, meditates on the fivefold Saman, which is the most excellent, as the senses. The Bhagavad Gita, the Bhakti Yoga hymn. Arjuna says, those devotees who ever steadfast worship you after this fashion, and those others who worship the imperishable and unmanifest, which of these have greater knowledge of yoga? Sri Krishna says, those who have fixed their minds on me, and who ever steadfast and endowed with supreme faith worship me, them do I hold to be perfect in yoga. And those who have completely controlled their senses and are of even mind under all conditions, and thus worship the imperishable, the ineffable, the unmanifest, the omnipresent, the incomprehensible, the immutable, the unchanging, the eternal, they, devoted to the well-being of all beings, attain me alone and none else. The task of those whose minds are set on the unmanifest is further difficult, for the ideal of the unmanifest is hard to attain for those who are embodied. But those who concentrate all their actions to me, regarding me as the supreme goal, and who worship me, meditating on me with single-minded concentration, to them whose minds are thus absorbed in me, verily I become ere long, O Partha, the savior from the death-fraught ocean of the world. Fix your mind on me alone, rest your thought on me alone, and in me alone you will live hereafter. Of this there is no doubt. If you are unable to fix your mind on me, O Dhananjaya, then seek to reach me by the yoga of constant practice. If you are incapable of constant practice, then devote yourself to me service, for even by rendering service to me you will attain perfection. If you are unable to do even this, then be self-controlled, surrender the fruit of all action, and take refuge in me. Knowledge is better than practice, and meditation is better than knowledge. Renunciation of the fruit of action is better than meditation. Peace immediately follows such renunciation. He who never hates any being and is friendly and compassionate to all, who is free from the feelings of I and mind, and even-minded in pain and pleasure, who is forbearing, ever content, and steady in contemplation, who is self-controlled and possessed of firm conviction, and who has consecrated his mind and understanding to me. Dear to me is the one who is thus devoted to me. He by whom the world is not afflicted, and whom the world cannot afflict, he who is free from joy and anger, fear and anxiety, he is dear to me. He who is free from dependence, who is pure and prompt, unconcerned and untroubled, and who has renounced all undertakings, dear to me is the man who is thus devoted to me. He who rejoices not and hates not, who grieves not and desires not, who has renounced both benevolent and evil, and is full of devotion, he is dear to me. He who is alike to foe and friend, unaltered in honor and dishonor, who is the same in cold and heat, in pleasure and pain, who is free from attachment, who is unchanged by honor and blame, who is silent, content with whatever he has, homeless, firm of mind, and full of devotion, that man is dear to me. Exceedingly dear to me are they who regard me as the supreme goal, and endowed with faith and devotion, follow this eternal living Dharma. From the Tao Te Ching numero 12. The 5 colors make one blind in the eyes. The 5 sounds make one deaf in the ears. The 5 flavors make one tasteless in the mouth. Racing and hunting make one wild in the heart. Treasures that are difficult to acquire make one cause damage. Therefore the sages care for the stomach and not the eyes. That is why they discard the other and take this. Le Nu. 12. Yen Yuan asks about benevolence. The master says that to return to the observance of the rites through overcoming the sense constitutes benevolence. If for a single day a man could return to the observance of the rites through overcoming himself, then the whole empire would consider benevolence to be his. However, the practice of benevolence depends on oneself alone and not on others. Yen Yuan says, I should like you to list the items. The master says, do not look unless it is in accordance with the rites. Do not listen unless it is in accordance with the rites. Do not speak unless it is in accordance with the rites. Do not move unless it is in accordance with the rites. Yen Yuan says, though I am not quick, I shall direct my efforts towards what you have said. Chong Kong asks about benevolence. The master says, when abroad, behave as though you were receiving an important guest. When employing the services of the common people, behave as though you were officiating at an important offering. Do not impose on others what you yourself do not desire. In this way you will be free from ill will, whether in a state or in a noble family. Chung Kung says, though I am not quick, I shall direct my efforts towards what you have said. Tzu Ma Nü asks about benevolence. The master says, the mark of the benevolent man is that he is loath to speak. In that case, can a man be said to be benevolent simply because he is loath to speak? The master says, when to act is difficult, is it any wonder that one is loath to speak? Tzu Ma Nü asks about the gentleman. The master says that the gentleman is free from worries and fears. In that case, can a man be said to be a gentleman simply because he is free from worries and fears? The master says, if on examining himself a man finds nothing to reproach himself for, what worries and fears can he have? Tzu Ma Nü appears worried, saying, all men have brothers, I alone have none. Tzu Ca says, I have heard it said, life and death are a matter of destiny. Wealth and honor depend on heaven. The gentleman is reverent and does nothing amiss, is respectful towards others and observant of the rites, and all within the 4 seasons are his brothers. What need is there for the gentleman to worry about not having any brothers? Tzu Chong asks about perspicacity. The master says, when a man is not influenced by slanders, which are assiduously repeated, or by complaints for which he feels a direct sympathy, he can be said to be perspicacious. He can at the same time be said to be distantly sighted. Tu Kung asks about government. The master says, give them enough food, give them enough arms, and the common people will have trust in you. Tu Kung says, if one has to give up one of these three, which should one give up first? Give up arms. Tu Kung says, if one has to give up one of the remaining two, which should one give up first? Give up food. Death has always been with us since the beginning of time, but when there is no trust, the common people will have nothing to stand on. Chi Tung Chong says, the important thing about the gentleman is the stuff he is made of. What does he need refinement for? Tu Kung comments, it is a pity that the gentleman should have spoken so about the gentleman. A team of horses cannot catch up with one's tongue. The stuff is no different from refinement. Refinement is no different from the stuff. The pelt of a tiger or a leopard shorn of hair is no different from that of a dog or a sheep. Duke I asks Yu Zhou, the harvest is bad and I have not sufficient to cover expenditure. What should I do? Yu Zhou answers, what about taxing the people 1 part in 10? I do not have sufficient as it is when I tax them 2 parts in 10. How could I possibly tax them 1 part in 10? When the people have sufficient, who is there to share your insufficiency? When the people have insufficient, who is there to share your sufficiency? Tu Kung asks about the exaltation of virtue and the recognition of misguided judgment. The master says, make it your guiding principle to do your best for others and to be trustworthy in what you say and move yourself to where rightness is. Then you will be exalting virtue. When you love a man, you want him to live, and when you hate him, you want to die. If having wanted him to live, you then want him to die, this is misguided judgment. If you did not do so for the sake of riches, you must have done so for the sake of novelty. Duke Qing of Qi asks Kung Fu Zi about government. Kung Fu Zi answers, let the ruler be a ruler, the subject a subject, the far a far, the son a son. The Duke says, splendid. Truly, if the ruler be not a ruler, the subject not a subject, the far not a far, the son not a son, then even if there be grain, who would I get it to eat it? Would I get to eat it? The master says, if anyone can arrive at the truth in a legal dispute on the evidence of only one party, it is perhaps you. Tulu never put off the fulfillment of a promise to the next day. The master says, in hearing litigation, I am no different from any other man. But if you insist on a difference, it is perhaps that I tried to get the parties not to resort to litigation in the first place. Tu Chong asks about government. The master says, over daily routine, do not show weariness, and when there is action to be taken, give of your best. The master says, the gentleman widely versed in culture, but brought back to essentials by the rights, can, I suppose, be relied upon not to turn against what he stood for. The master says, the gentleman helps others to recognize what is benevolent in them. He does not help them to recognize what is bad in them. The small man does the opposite. Chi Kong Tzu asks Kung Fu Zi about government. Kung Fu Zi answers, to govern, Cheng, is to correct, Cheng. If you set an example by being correct, who would dare to remain incorrect? The prevalence of thieves was a source of trouble to Chi Kong Tzu, who asks the advice of Kung Fu Zi. Kung Fu Zi answers, if you yourself were not a man of desires, no one would steal even if stealing carried a reward. Chi Kong Tzu asks Kung Fu Zi about government, saying, what would you think if, in order to move closer to those who possess the way, I were to kill those who do not follow the way? Kung Fu Zi answers, in administering your government, what need is there for you to kill? Just desire the benevolence yourself, and the common people will be benevolent. The virtue of the gentleman is like wind. The virtue of the small man is like grass. Let the wind blow over the grass, and it is sure to bend. Tu Chong asks, what must a gentleman be like before he can be said to have got through? The master says, what on earth do you mean by getting through? Tu Chong answers, what I have in mind is a man who is sure to be known whether he serves in a state or in a noble family. The master says, that is being known, not getting through. Now the term getting through describes a man who is straight by nature and fond of what is right, sensitive to other people's words and observant of the expression on their faces, and always mindful of being modest. Such a man is bound to get through, whether he serves in a state or in a noble family. On the other hand, the term being known describes a man who has no misgivings about his own claim to benevolence when all he is doing is putting up a facade of benevolence which is belied by his deeds. Such a man is sure to be known, whether he serves in a state or in a noble family. Fan Chi was in attendance during an outing to the rain altar. He said, "May I ask about the exaltation of virtue, the reformation of the depraved, and the recognition of misguided judgment?" The master says, "What a splendid question. To put service before the reward you get for it. To put service before the reward you get for it. Is that not exaltation of virtue? To attack evil as evil and not as evil of a particular man. Is that not the way to reform the depraved? To let a sudden fit of anger make you forget the safety of your own person or even that of your parents. Is that not misguided judgment?" Fan Chi asks about benevolence. The master says, "Love your fellow men." He asks about wisdom. The master says, "Know your fellow men." Fan Chi fails to grasp his meaning. The master says, "Raise the straight and set them over the crooked. This can make the crooked straight." Fan Chi withdrew and went to see Tu Sa, saying, "Just now I went to see the master and I asked about wisdom." The master says, "Raise the straight and set them over the crooked. This can make the crooked straight." What does he mean? Tu Sa says, "Rich indeed is the meaning of these words. When Shu possesses the empire, he raises Cao Yao from the multitude, and by doing so, put those who were not benevolent at a great distance. When Tong possesses the empire, he raises Yi Yin from the multitude, and by doing so, put those who were not benevolent at a great distance." Tu Kung asks about how friends should be treated. The master says, Advise them to the best of your ability and guide them properly, but stop when there is no hope of success. Do not ask to be snubbed. Tsang Tzu says, "A gentleman makes friends through being cultivated, but looks to friends for support in benevolence." Digha Nikaya, the Potapata Sutta, numero 9. I have heard that on one occasion the Blessed One was staying near Savatthi in Jeta's grove, Anathapindika's monastery. Now at that occasion Potapata the wanderer, together with a large following of about 300 wanderers, had taken up residence in the debating hall near the Tinduka tree in the single pavilion park of Queen Malika. Then the Blessed One, early in the matin, taking his robes and bowl, entered Savatthi for alms. Then the thought occurred to him, whilst it's still too early to go into Savatthi for alms, why don't I go to the debating hall near the Tinduka tree in the single pavilion park of Queen Malika to see Potapata the wanderer? So he went to the debating hall near the Tinduka tree in the single pavilion park of Queen Malika. Now on that occasion Potapata the wanderer was sitting with his large following of wanderers, all making a great noise and racket, discussing many kinds of bestial topics of conversation about kings, robbers, and ministers of state, armies and alarms and battles, food and drink, clothing, furniture, garlands and scents, relatives, vehicles, villages, towns, cities, the countryside, women and heroes, the gossip of the street and the well, tales of the dead, tales of diversity, the creation of the world and of the sea, talk of whether things exist or not. Then Potapata the wanderer saw the Blessed One coming from a distance, and on seeing him, hushed his following. "Be quiet, benevolent sirs, don't make any noise. Here comes Gautama the contemplative. He is fond of quietude and speaks in honor of quietude. Maybe if he perceives our group as quiet, he will consider it worth his while to come our way." So the wanderers fell silent. Then the Blessed One went to Potapata, and Potapata said to him, "Come, Blessed One, welcome, Blessed One. It's been a long time since the Blessed One has gone out of his way to come here. Sit down, Blessed One. This seat has been prepared." So the Blessed One sat on the prepared seat. Potapata, taking a lower seat, sat to one side. As he was sitting there, the Blessed One said to him, "For what topic of conversation are you gathered together here? In the midst of what topic of conversation have you been interrupted?" When this was said, Potapata replied, "Never mind, Master, about the topic of conversation, for which we have gathered here. It won't be difficult for the Blessed One to hear about that later. For the past few days, discussion has arisen amongst the many sects of Brahmins and contemplatives gathered and sitting together in the debating hall concerning the ultimate cessation of perception. How is there the ultimate cessation of perception? With regard to this, some said a person's perception arises and ceases without cause, without reason. When it arises, one is percipient. When it ceases, one is not percipient. That's how one group described the ultimate cessation of perception. Then someone said, no, that's not how it is. Perception is a person's self, which comes and goes. When it comes, one is percipient. When it goes, one is not percipient. That's how one group described the ultimate cessation of perception. Then someone else said, no, that's not how it is, for there are Brahmins and contemplators of great power, great potency. They draw perception in and out of a person. When they draw it in, one is percipient. When they draw it out, one is not percipient. That's how one group described the ultimate cessation of perception. Then someone else said, no, that's not how it is, for there are devas of great power, great potency. They draw perception in and out of a person. When they draw it in, one is percipient. When they draw it out, one is not percipient. That's how one group described the ultimate cessation of perception. Then the memory of the Blessed One arose within me. Ah, the Blessed One. Ah, the one well gone. The one well gone, who surely is well skilled in these matters. The Blessed One is skilled and expert in the ultimate cessation of perception. So what, Master, is the ultimate cessation of perception? In this regard, Pottapata, those Brahmins and contemplatives who say that a person's perception arises and ceases without cause, without reason, are wrong from the very start. Why is that? Because a person's perception arises and ceases with a cause, with a reason. With training, one perception arises, and with training, another perception ceases. And what is that training? There is the case where a Tathagata appears in the world worthy and rightly self-awakened. This is how a monk is consummate in virtue. Here, Pottapata, a Tathagata arises in the world, a worthy one, perfectly enlightened, endowed with clear knowledge and conduct accomplished, a knower of the world, unsurpassed trainer of men, to be tamed, teacher of angels and men, enlightened and exalted. Having recognized by his own direct knowledge this world with its angels, its Mars, and its Brahmas, this generation with its recluses and Brahmins, its rulers and people, he makes it known to others. He teaches the Dharma that is benevolent in the beginning, benevolent in the middle, and benevolent in the end. Possessing meaning and phrasing, he reveals the holy life that is fully complete and purified. A householder or a householder's son or one born into some other family hears the Dharma. Having heard the Dharma, he gains faith in the Tathagata. Endowed with such faith, he reflects, the household life is crowded, a path of dust. Going forth is like the open air. It is not easy for one dwelling at home to lead the perfectly complete, perfectly purified, holy life. Bright as a polished conch. Let me then shave off my hair and beard, put on saffron robes, and go forth from home to homelessness. After some time he abandons his accumulation of wealth, be it large or small. He abandons his circle of relatives, be it large or small. He shaves off his hair and beard, puts on saffron robes, and goes forth from home to homelessness. When he has thus gone forth, he lives restrained by the restraint of the patimoksha, possessed of proper behavior and resort. Having taken up the rules of training, he trains himself in them, seeing danger in the slightest faults. He comes to be endowed with wholesome bodily and verbal action. His livelihood is purified, and he is possessed of conduct. He guards the doors of his sense faculties, is endowed with mindfulness and clear comprehension, and is content. And how Pottapata is the bhikshu possessed of virtuous discipline? Herein, Pottapata, having abandoned the destruction of life, the bhikshu abstains from the destruction of life. He has laid down the rod and weapon and dwells conscientious, full of kindness, sympathetic for the well-being of all living beings. This Pottapata pertains to his perfection in virtuous discipline. Having abandoned taking what is not given, he abstains from taking what is not given. Accepting and expecting only what is given, he lives in honesty with a pure mind. This Pottapata pertains to his perfection in virtuous discipline. Having abandoned in celibacy, he leads the holy life of celibacy. He dwells aloof and abstains from the vulgar practice of sexual intercourse. This Pottapata pertains to his perfection in virtuous discipline. Having abandoned false speech, he abstains from falsehood. He speaks only the truth. He lives devoted to truth, trustworthy and reliable. He does not deceive anyone in the world. This Pottapata pertains to his perfection in virtuous discipline. Having abandoned slander, he abstains from slander. He does not repeat elsewhere what he has heard here in order to divide others from the people here, nor does he repeat here what he has heard elsewhere in order to divide these from the people there. Thus he is a reconciler of those who are divided and a promoter of friendships. Rejoicing, delighting, and exulting in concord, he speaks only words that are conducive to concord. This Pottapata pertains to his perfection in virtuous discipline. Having abandoned harsh speech, he abstains from harsh speech. He speaks only such words as are gentle, pleasing to the ear, endearing, going to the heart, are polite, amiable, and agreeable to the many folk. This Pottapata pertains to his perfection in virtuous discipline. Having abandoned idle chatter, he abstains from idle chatter. He speaks at the right time, speaks what is factual and beneficial, speaks on the Dharma and the discipline. His words are worth treasuring, They are timely backed by reasons, measured and connected with the benevolent. This Potapata pertains to his perfection and virtuous discipline. He abstains from damaging seed and plant life. This Potapata pertains to his perfection and virtuous discipline. He eats only in one part of the day, refraining from food at night and from eating at improper times. This Potapata pertains to his perfection in virtuous discipline. He abstains from dancing, singing, instrumental music, and from witnessing unsuitable shows. This Potapata pertains to his perfection in virtuous discipline. He abstains from wearing garlands, embellishing himself with scents, and beautifying himself with unguents. This Potapata pertains to his perfection in virtuous discipline. He abstains from high and luxurious beds and seats. This Potapata pertains to his perfection and virtuous discipline. He abstains from accepting gold and silver. This Potapata pertains to his perfection and virtuous discipline. He abstains from accepting uncooked grain, raw meat, women and girls, male and female slaves, goats and sheep, fowl and swine, elephants, cattle, horses, and mares. This Potapata pertains to his perfection and virtuous discipline. He abstains from accepting fields and lands. This Potapata pertains to his perfection and virtuous discipline. He abstains from running messages and errands. This Potapata pertains to his perfection and virtuous discipline. He abstains from buying and selling. This Potapata pertains to his perfection and virtuous discipline. He abstains from dealing with false weights, false metals, and false measures. This Potapata pertains to his perfection and virtuous discipline. He abstains from the crooked ways of bribery, deception, and fraud. This Potapata pertains to his perfection and virtuous discipline. He abstains from mutilating, executing, imprisoning, robbery, plunder, and violence. This Potapata pertains to his perfection and virtuous discipline. Whereas some recluses and Brahmins, whilst living on food offered by the faithful, continually cause damage to seed and plant life, to plants propagated from roots, stems, joints, buds, and seeds, he abstains from damaging seed and plant life. This Potapata pertains to his perfection and virtuous discipline. Whereas some recluses and Brahmins, whilst living on food offered by the faithful, enjoy the utilization of stored up treasures, such as stored up food, drinks, garments, vehicles, bedding, scents, and comestibles, he abstains from the utilization of stored up treasures. This Potapata pertains to his perfection and virtuous discipline. Whereas some recluses and Brahmins, whilst living on food offered by the faithful, attend unsuitable shows, such as shows featuring dancing, singing, or instrumental music, theatrical performances, narrations of legends, music played by hand clapping, cymbals, and drums, picture houses, acrobatic performances, combats of elephants, horses, buffaloes, bulls, goats, rams, cocks, and quails, stick fights, boxing and wrestling, sham fights, roll calls, battle raids, and regimental reviews. He abstains from attending such unsuitable shows. This Potapata pertains to his perfection and virtuous discipline. Whereas some recluses and Brahmins, whilst living on food offered by the faithful, indulge in the following games and recreations: Atapata, Dasapada, Akasha, Santika, Kalika, Gatika, Salakahata, Aksha, Bangachira, Bangaka, Moksha Chika, Chingolika, Patalaka, Rataka, Danuka, Aksharika, Manasika, Yatavaja. He abstains from such games that are a basis for negligence. This Potapata pertains to his perfection and virtuous discipline. Whereas some recluses and Brahmins, whilst living on food offered by the faithful, enjoy the utilization of high and luxurious beds and seats, such as spacious couches, thrones with animal figures carved on the supports, long-haired coverlets, multicolored patchwork coverlets, white woolen coverlets, and woolen coverlets embroidered with flowers, quilts stuffed with cotton, woolen coverlets embroidered with animal figures, woolen coverlets with hair on both sides or on one side, bedspreads embroidered with gems, silk coverlets, dance hall carpets, elephant, horse, or chariot rugs, rugs of antelope skins, choice spreads made of kadali deer hides, spreads with red awnings overhead, couches with red cushions for head and feet. He abstains from the utilization of such high and luxurious beds and seats. This Potapata pertains to his perfection and virtuous discipline. Whereas some recluses and Brahmins, whilst living on food offered by the faithful, enjoy the utilization of such devices for embellishing and beautifying themselves as the following: rubbing scented powders into the body, massaging with oils, bathing in perfumed water, kneading the limbs, mirrors, ointments, garlands, scents, unguents, face powders, makeup, bracelets, headbands, decorated walking sticks, ornamented medicine tubes, rapiers, soleil shades, embroidered sandals, turbans, diadems, yak-tail whisks, and long-fringed white robes. He abstains from the utilization of such devices for embellishment and beautification. This Potapata pertains to his perfection and virtuous discipline. Whereas some recluses and Brahmins, whilst living on the food offered by the faithful, engage in frivolous chatter, such as talk about kings, thieves, and ministers of state, talk about armies, dangers, and wars, talk about food, drink, garments, and lodgings, talk about garlands and scents, talk about relations, vehicles, villages, towns, cities, and countries, talk about women and talk about heroes, street talk and talk by the well, talk about those departed in days gone by, rambling chit-chat, speculations about the world and about the sea, talk about gain and loss. He abstains from such frivolous chatter. This Potapata pertains to his perfection and virtuous discipline. Whereas some recluses and Brahmins, whilst living on the food offered by the faithful, engage in wrangling, argumentation, saying to one another, "You don't understand this doctrine and discipline. It is I who understand this doctrine and discipline. How can you understand this doctrine and discipline? You're practicing the wrong way. I'm practicing the right way. I'm being consistent. You're inconsistent. What should have been said first, you said last. What should have been said last, you said first. What you took so long to think out has been confuted. Your doctrine has been refuted. You're defeated. Go try to save your doctrine and disentangle yourself now if you can. He abstains from such wrangling argumentation. This Potapata pertains to his perfection in virtuous discipline. Whereas some recluses and Brahmanas, whilst living on the food offered by the faithful, engage in running messages and errands for kings, ministers of state, Kachyas, Brahmins, householders, or youths who command them, go here, go there, take this, bring that from there, he abstains from running such messages and errands. This Potapata pertains to his perfection in virtuous discipline. Whereas some recluses and Brahmanas, whilst living on the food offered by the faithful, engage in scheming, talking, hinting, belittling others, and pursuing gain with gain, he abstains from such kinds of scheming and talking. This Potapata pertains to his perfection in virtuous discipline. Whereas some recluses and Brahmanas, whilst living on the food offered by the faithful, earn their living by a wrong means of livelihood by such debased arts as prophesying long life, prosperity, and additionally, or the reverse, from the marks on a person's limbs, hands, feet, and additionally, divining by means of omens and signs, making auguries on the basis of thunderbolts and celestial portents, interpreting ominous dreams, telling fortunes from marks on the body, making auguries from the marks on cloth gnawed by mice, offering fire oblations from a ladle, offering oblations of husks, rice powder, rice grains, ghee, and oil to the angels, offering oblations from the mouth, offering blood offerings to the angels, making predictions based on the fingertips, determining whether the site for a proposed house or garden is propitious or not, making predictions for officers of state, laying demons in a cemetery, laying ghosts, knowledge of charms to be pronounced by one living in an earthen house, snake charming, the poison craft, scorpion craft, rat craft, bird craft, crow craft, foretelling the numbers of years that a man has to live, reciting charms to give protection from arrows, reciting charms to understand the language of animals. He abstains from such wrong means of livelihood, from such debased arts. This Potapata pertains to his perfection in virtuous discipline. Whereas some recluses and Brahmanas, whilst living on the food offered by the faithful, earn their living by a wrong means of livelihood by such debased arts as interpreting the significance of the color, shape, and other features of the following items to determine whether they portend fortune or misfortune for their owners: gems, garments, staffs, swords, spears, arrows, bows, other weapons, women, men, boys, girls, slaves, slave women, elephants, horses, buffaloes, bulls, cows, goats, rams, fowl, quails, lizards, earrings, or house gables, tortoises, or other animals. He abstains from such wrong means of livelihood or from such debased arts. This Potapata pertains to his perfection in virtuous discipline. Whereas some recluses and Brahmanas, while living on the food offered by the faithful, earn their living by wrong means of livelihood by such debased arts as making predictions to the effect that the king will march forth, the king will return, our king will attack, and the enemy king will retreat, the enemy king will attack, and our king will retreat, our king will triumph, and the enemy king will be defeated, the enemy king will triumph, and our king will be defeated, thus there will be victory for one and defeat for the other. He abstains from such wrong means of livelihood, from such debased arts. This Potapata pertains to his perfection in virtuous discipline. Whereas some recluses and Brahmanas, while living on the food offered by the faithful, earn their living by wrong means of livelihood by such debased arts as predicting there will be an eclipse of the moon, an eclipse of the soleil, an eclipse of a constellation. The soleil and the moon will go on their proper courses. There will be an aberration of the soleil and the moon. The constellations will go on their proper courses. There will be an aberration of a constellation. There will be a fall of meteors. There will be a sky blaze. There will be an earthquake. There will be an earth roar. There will be a rising and setting, a darkening and brightening of the moon, soleil, and constellations. Such will be the result of the moon's eclipse, such the result of the soleil's eclipse, and so on down to such will be the result of the rising and setting, darkening and brightening of the moon, soleil, and constellations. He abstains from such wrong means of livelihood and from such debased arts. This Potapata pertains to his perfection in virtuous discipline. Whereas some recluses and Brahmanas, whilst living on the food offered by the faithful, earn their living by wrong means of livelihood by such debased arts as predicting there will be abundant rain, there will be a drought, there will be a benevolent harvest, there will be a famine, there will be security, there will be danger, there will be sickness, there will be health. Or they earn their living by accounting, computation, calculation, the composing of poetry, and speculations about the world. He abstained from such wrong means of livelihood, from such debased arts. This Potapata pertains to his perfection and virtuous discipline. Whereas some recluses and Brahmins, whilst living on the food offered by the faithful, earn their living by wrong means of livelihood by such debased arts as arranging auspicious dates for marriages, both those in which the bride is brought home and those in which she is sent out, arranging auspicious dates for betrothals and divorces, arranging auspicious dates for the accumulation or expenditure of money, reciting charms to make people lucky or unlucky, rejuvenating the fetuses of abortive women, reciting spells to bind a man's tongue, to paralyze his jaws, to make him lose control over his hands, or to bring on deafness, obtaining auricular answers to questions by means of a mirror, a girl, or an angel, worshipping the soleil, worshipping Mahabrahma, bringing the forth flames from the mouth, invoking the angel of luck. He abstains from such wrong means of livelihood and from such debased arts. This Potapata pertains to his perfection and virtuous discipline. Whereas some recluses and Brahmanas, whilst living on the food offered by the faithful, earn their living by wrong means of livelihood by such debased arts as promising gifts to deities in return for favors, or fulfilling such promises, demonology, reciting spells after entering an earthen house, inducing virility and impotence, preparing and consecrating sites for a house, giving ceremonial mouthwashes and ceremonial bathing, offering offertory fires, administering emetics, purgatives and expectorants and phlegmagogues, administering medicines through the ear and through the nose, administering ointments and counter ointments, practicing fine surgery on the eyes and ears, practicing general surgery on the body, practicing as a children's doctor. He abstains from such wrong means of livelihood, from such debased arts. This Potapata pertains to his perfection in virtuous discipline. Potapata, the bhikshu who is thus possessed of virtuous discipline, sees no danger anywhere in regards to his restraint by virtuous discipline. Just as a head-anointed noble warrior who has defeated his enemy sees no danger anywhere from his enemies, so the bhikshu who is thus possessed of virtuous discipline sees no danger anywhere in regard to his restraint by virtuous discipline. Endowed with his noble aggregate of virtuous discipline, he experiences within himself a blameless happiness. In this way, Potapata, the bhikshu, is possessed of virtuous discipline. This Potapata is that perfection in virtuous discipline. And how, Potapata, does the bhikshu guard the doors of his sense faculties? Herein, Potapata, having seen a form with the eye, the bhikshu does not grasp at the sign or the details. Since if he were to dwell without restraint over the faculty of the eye, evil, unwholesome states such as covetousness and grief might assail him. He practices restraint, guards the faculty of the eye, and achieves restraint over the faculty of the eye. Having heard a sound with the ear, the bhikshu does not grasp at the sign or the details. Since if he were to dwell without restraint over the faculty of the ear, evil, unwholesome states such as covetousness and grief might assail him. He practices restraint, guards the faculty of the ear, and achieves restraint over the faculty of the ear. Having smelled an odor with the nose, the bhikshu does not grasp at the sign or the details. Since if he were to dwell without restraint over the faculty of the nose, evil, unwholesome states such as covetousness and grief might assail him. He practices restraint, guards the faculty of the nose, and achieves restraint over the faculty of the nose. Having tasted a flavor with the tongue, the bhikshu does not grasp at the sign or the details. Since if he were to dwell without restraint over the faculty of the tongue, evil, unwholesome states such as covetousness and grief might assail him. He practices restraint, guards the faculty of the tongue, and achieves restraint over the faculty of the tongue. Having touched a tangible object with the body, the bhikshu does not grasp at the sign or the details. Since if he were to dwell without restraint over the faculty of the body, evil, unwholesome states such as covetousness and grief might assail him. He practices restraint, guards the faculty of the body, and achieves restraint over the faculty of the body. Having cognized a mind object with the mind, the bhikshu does not grasp at the sign or the details. Since if he were to dwell without restraint over the faculty of the mind, evil, unwholesome states such as covetousness and grief might assail him. He practices restraint, guards the faculty of the mind, and achieves restraint over the faculty of the mind. Endowed with this noble restraint of the sense faculties, he experiences within himself an unblemished happiness. In this way, Potapata, the bhikshu, guards the doors of the sense faculties. And how, Potapata, is the bhikshu endowed with mindfulness and clear comprehension? Herein, Potapata, in going forward and returning, the bhikshu acts with clear comprehension. In looking ahead and looking aside, he acts with clear comprehension. In bending and stretching the limbs, he acts with clear comprehension. In wearing his robes and cloak, and utilizing his alms bowl, he acts with clear comprehension. In eating, drinking, chewing, and tasting, he acts with clear comprehension. In defecating and urinating, he acts with clear comprehension. In going, standing, sitting, lying down, waking up, speaking, and remaining silent, he acts with clear comprehension. In this way, Potapata, the bhikshu, is endowed with mindfulness and clear comprehension. And how, Potapata, is the bhikshu content? Herein, Potapata, a bhikshu is content with robes to protect his body and alms food to sustain his belly. Wherever he goes, he sets out, taking only his requisites along with him. Just as a bird, wherever it goes, flies with its wings as its only burden, in the same way, a bhikshu is content with robes to protect his body and alms food to sustain his belly. Wherever he goes, he sets out, taking only his requisites along with him. In this way, Potapata, the bhikshu, is content. Endowed with this noble aggregate of virtuous discipline, this noble restraint over the sense faculties, this noble mindfulness and clear comprehension, and this noble contentment, he resorts to a secluded dwelling, a forest, the foot of a tree, a mountain, a glen, a hillside cave, a cremation ground, a jungle grove, the open air, a heap of straw. After returning from his alms round, following his meals, he sits down, crosses his legs, holds his body erect, and sets up mindfulness before him. Having abandoned covetousness for the world, he dwells with a mind free from covetousness. He purifies his mind from covetousness. Having abandoned ill will and hatred, he dwells with a benevolent mind, sympathetic for the well-being of all living beings. He purifies his mind from ill will and hatred. Having abandoned dullness and drowsiness, he dwells perceiving light, mindful, and clearly comprehending. He purifies his mind from dullness and drowsiness. Having abandoned restlessness and worry, he dwells at ease within himself. With a peaceful mind, he purifies his mind from restlessness and worry. Having abandoned doubt, he dwells as one who has passed beyond doubt. Unperplexed about wholesome states, he purifies his mind from doubt. Potapata, suppose a man were to take a loan and apply it to his business, and his business were to succeed so that he could pay back his old debts and would have enough money left over to maintain a wife. He would reflect on this, and as a result, he would become glad and experience joy. Again, Potapata, suppose a man were to become sick, afflicted, gravely ill, so that he could not enjoy his food, and his strength would decline. After some time, he would recover from that illness and would enjoy his food and regain his bodily strength. He would reflect on this, and as a result, he would become glad and experience joy. Again, Potapata, suppose a man were locked up in a prison. After some time, he would be released from prison, safe and secure, with no loss of his possessions. He would reflect on this, and as a result, he would become glad and experience joy. Again, Potapata, suppose a man were a slave without independence, subservient to others, unable to go where he wants. After some time, he would be released from slavery and gain his independence. He would no longer be subservient to others, but a free man, able to go where he wants. He would reflect on this, and as a result, he would become glad and experience joy. Again, Potapata, suppose a man with wealth and possessions were traveling along a desert road, where food was scarce and dangers were many. After some time, he would cross over the desert and arrive safely at a village which is safe and free from danger. He would reflect on this, and as a result, he would become glad and experience joy. In the same way, Potapata, when a bhikshu sees that these 5 hindrances are unabandoned within himself, he regards that as a debt, as a sickness, as confinement in prison, as slavery, as a desert road. But when he sees that these 5 hindrances have been abandoned within himself, he regards that as freedom from debt, as benevolent health, as release from prison, as freedom from slavery, as a place of safety. When he sees that these 5 hindrances have been abandoned within himself, gladness arises. When he is glad, and rapture arises. When his mind is filled with rapture, his body becomes tranquil. Tranquil in body, he experiences happiness. Being happy, his mind becomes concentrated. Seeing that these 5 hindrances have been abandoned within him, he becomes glad. Glad, he becomes enraptured. Enraptured, his body grows tranquil. His body tranquil, he is sensitive to pleasure. Feeling pleasure, his mind becomes concentrated. Quite withdrawn from sensual pleasures, withdrawn from unskillful mental qualities, the monk enters and remains in the first jhana. The rapture and pleasure born from withdrawal, accompanied by directed thought and evaluation. His early perception of sensuality ceases, and on that occasion there is a perception of refined truth, of rapture and pleasure born of seclusion. On that occasion he is one who is recipient of a refined truth, of rapture and pleasure born of seclusion. And thus it is that with training one perception arises, and with training another perception ceases. Then with the stilling of directed thoughts and evaluations, the monk enters and remains in the second jhana, rapture and pleasure born of composure, unification of awareness free from directed thought and evaluation, internal assurance. His earlier perception of a refined truth, of rapture and pleasure born of seclusion ceases, and on that occasion there is a perception of refined truth, of rapture and pleasure born of concentration. On that occasion he is one who is percipient of a refined truth, of rapture and pleasure born of concentration. And thus it is that with training one perception arises, and with training another perception ceases. And then with the fading of rapture he remains equanimous, mindful and alert, and senses pleasure with the body. He enters and remains in the third jhana, of which the noble ones declare equanimous and mindful he has a pleasant abiding. His earlier perception of a refined truth, of rapture and pleasure born of concentration ceases, and on that occasion there is a perception of a refined truth, of equanimity. On that occasion he is one who is percipient of a refined truth, of equanimity. And thus it is that with training one perception arises, and with training another perception ceases. And then with the abandoning of pleasure and pain, as with the earlier disappearance of elation and distress, the monk enters and remains in the fourth jhana. Purity of equanimity and mindfulness, neither pleasure nor pain. His earlier perception of a refined truth, of equanimity ceases, and on that occasion there is a perception of a refined truth, of neither pleasure nor pain. On that occasion he is one who is percipient of a refined truth, of neither pleasure nor pain. And thus it is that with training one perception arises, and with training another perception ceases. And then with the complete transcending of perceptions of physical form, with the disappearance of perceptions of resistance, and not heeding perceptions of diversity, perceiving infinite space, perceiving infinite space, the monk enters and remains in the dimension of the infinitude of space. His early perception of a refined truth, of neither pleasure nor pain ceases, and on that occasion there is a perception of a refined truth, of the dimension of the infinitude of space. On that occasion he is one who is percipient of a refined truth, of the dimension of the infinitude of space. And thus it is that with training one perception arises, and with training another perception ceases. And then with the complete transcending of the dimension of the infinitude of space, receiving infinite consciousness, the monk enters and remains in the dimension of the infinitude of consciousness. His early perception of a refined truth of the dimension of the infinitude of space ceases, and on that occasion there is a perception of a refined truth of the dimension of the infinitude of consciousness. On that occasion he is one who is recipient of a refined truth of the dimension of the infinitude of consciousness. And thus it is that with training one perception arises, and with training another perception ceases. And then with the complete transcending of the dimension of the infinitude of consciousness, thinking, there is nothing. There enters and remains in the dimension of nothingness. His earlier perception of a refined truth of the dimension of the infinitude of consciousness ceases, and on that occasion there is a perception of a refined truth of the dimension of nothingness. On that occasion he is one who is perceiving of a refined truth of the dimensions of nothingness. And thus it is that with training one perception arises, and with training another perception ceases. Now when the monk is perceiving of himself here, then from there to there, step by step he touches the peak of perception. As he remains at the peak of perception, the thought occurs to him, thinking is bad for me, not thinking is better for me. If I were to think and will, this perception of mine would cease, and a grosser perception would appear. What if I were neither to think nor to will? So he neither thinks nor wills, as he is neither thinking nor willing, that perception ceases, and another grosser perception does not appear. He touches cessation. This Potapata is how there is the alert step-by-step attainment of the ultimate cessation of perception. Now what do you think, Potapata? Have you ever before heard of such an alert step-by-step attainment of the ultimate cessation of perception? No, Master. And here is how I understand the Dharma taught by the Blessed One. When the monk is percipient of himself here, then from there to there, step by step, he touches the peak of perception. As he remains at the peak of perception, the thought occurs to him, thinking is bad for me, not thinking is better for me. If I were to think and will, this perception of mine would cease, and a grosser perception would appear. What if I were neither to think nor to will? So he neither thinks nor wills, and as he is neither thinking nor willing, that perception ceases, and another grosser perception does not appear. He touches cessation. This Potapata is how there is the alert step-by-step attainment of the ultimate cessation of perception. That's right, Potapata. But Master, does the Blessed One describe one peak of perception or many peaks of perception? Potapata, I describe one peak of perception and many peaks of perception. And how does the Blessed One describe one peak of perception and many peaks of perception? In whatever way one touches cessation, Potapata, that's the way I describe the peak of perception. That's how I describe one peak of perception and many peaks of perception. Now, Master, does perception arise first and knowledge after, or does knowledge arise first and perception after, or do perception and knowledge arise simultaneously? Potapata, perception arises first and knowledge after, and the arising of knowledge comes from the arising of perception. One discerns its independence on this, that my knowledge has arisen. Through this line of reasoning, one can realize how perception arises first and knowledge after, and how the arising of knowledge comes from the arising of perception. Now, Master, is perception a person's self, or is perception one thing and self another? What self do you posit, Potapata? I posit a gross self, possessed of form made up of the four great existence, earth, water, fire, and wind, feeding on physical food. Then, Potapata, yourself would be gross, possessed of form made up of the four great existence, feeding on physical food. That being the case, then for you perception would be one thing and self another. And it's through this line of reasoning that one can realize how perception will be one thing and self another, even as there remains this gross self possessed of form made up of the four great existence on feeding on food. One perception arises for that person as another perception passes away. It's through this line of reasoning that one can realize how perception will be one thing and self another. Then, Master, I posit a mind made self complete in all its parts, not inferior in its faculties. Then, Potapata, yourself would be mind made complete in all its parts, not inferior in its faculties. That being the case, then, for you, perception would be one thing and self another. And it's through this line of reasoning that one can realize how perception will be one thing and self another. Even as there remains this mind made self, complete in all its parts, not inferior in its faculties, one perception arises for that person as another perception passes away. It's through this line of reasoning that one can realize how perception will be one thing and self another. Then, Master, I posit a formless self, made of perception. Then, Potapata, yourself would be formless and made of perception. That being the case, then, for you, perception will be one thing and self another. And it's through this line of reasoning that one can recognize how perception will be one thing and self another. Even as there remains this formless self made of perception, one perception arises for that person as another perception passes away. It's through this line of reasoning that one can recognize how perception will be one thing and self another. Is it possible for me to know, Master, whether perception is a person's self, or if perception is one thing and self another? Potapata, having other views, other practices, other satisfactions, other aims, other teachers. It's hard for you to know whether perception is a person's self, or if a perception is one thing and self another. Well then, Master, if having other views, other practices, other satisfactions, other aims, other teachers, it's hard for me to know whether perception is a person's self, or if perception is one thing and self another. Then is it the case that the cosmos is eternal, that only this is true and anything otherwise is worthless? Potapata, I haven't expounded that the cosmos is eternal, that only this is true, and anything else and anything otherwise is worthless. Then is it the case that the cosmos is not eternal, that only this is true and anything otherwise is worthless? Potapata, I haven't expounded that the cosmos is not eternal, that only this is true and anything otherwise is worthless. Then is it the case that the cosmos is finite, the cosmos is infinite, the soul and the body are the same, the soul is one thing and the body another. After death the Tathagata exists, after death the Tathagata does not exist. After death the Tathagata both exists and does not exist. After death a Tathagata neither exists nor does not exist, that only this is true and anything otherwise is worthless. Potapata, I haven't expounded that after death a Tathagata neither exists nor does not exist, that only this is true and anything otherwise is worthless. But why hasn't the Blessed One expounded these things? Because they are not conducive to the goal, are not conducive to the Dhamma, are not basic to the holy life. They don't lead to disenchantment, to dispassion, to cessation, to calm, to direct knowledge, to self-awakening, to unbinding. That's why I haven't expounded them. And what has the Blessed One expounded? I have expounded that this is stress. This is the origination of stress. This is the cessation of stress. This is the path of practice leading to the cessation of stress. And why has the Blessed One expounded these things? Because they are conducive to the goal, conducive to the Dhamma, and basic to the holy life. They lead to disenchantment, to dispassion, to cessation, to calm, to direct knowledge, to self-awakening, to unbinding. That's why I have expounded them. So it is, Blessed One, so it is, O well gone one. O one well gone. Well, now it's time for the Blessed One to do as he seems fit. Then the Blessed One got up from his seat and left. Not long after he had left, the wanderers with sneering words jeered at Potapata the wanderer from all sides. So, whatever Gautama the contemplative says, Sir Potapata rejoices in his every word. So it is, Blessed One, so it is, one well gone. But we don't understand Gautama the contemplative as having taught any categorical teaching as to whether the cosmos is infinite or the cosmos is finite, or whether after death the Tathagata neither exists nor does not exist. When this was said, Potapata the wanderer replied to the wanderers, I too don't understand Gautama the contemplative as having taught any kind of categorical teaching as to whether the cosmos is infinite or the cosmos is finite, or whether after death a Tathagata neither exists nor does not exist. But Gautama the contemplative describes a genuine, authentic, and accurate practice grounded in the Dhamma and consonant with the Dhamma. And when a genuine, authentic, and accurate practice grounded in the Dhamma and consonant with the Dhamma is being explained, why shouldn't a knowledgeable person such as myself rejoice in the well-spokenness of Gautama the contemplative's well-spoken words? Then 2 or 3 days later, Chitta, the elephant trainer's son, and Potapata the wanderer went to the Blessed One. On their arrival, Chitta bowed down to the Blessed One and sat to one side, while Potapata the wanderer greeted the Blessed One courteously. After exchange of friendly greetings and courtesies, he sat to one side. And as he was sitting there, he said to the Blessed One, the other day, not long after the Blessed One had left, the wanderers with sneering words jeered at me from all sides. So whatever Gautama the contemplative says, Sir Potapata rejoices in his every word. So it is, Blessed One, so it is, one well gone. But we don't understand Gautama the contemplative as having taught any categorical teaching as to whether the cosmos is infinite or the cosmos is finite, or whether after death a Tathagata neither exists nor does not exist. When this was said, I replied to the wanderers, I too don't understand Gautama the contemplative as having taught any categorical teaching as to whether the cosmos is infinite or the cosmos is finite, or whether after death the Tathagata neither exists nor does not exist. But Gautama the contemplative described a genuine, authentic, and accurate practice grounded in the Dhamma and consonant with the Dhamma. And when a genuine, authentic, and accurate practice grounded in the Dhamma and consonant with the Dhamma is being explained, why shouldn't a knowledgeable person such as myself rejoice in the well-spokenness of Gautama the contemplative's well-spoken words? The Buddha says, Potapata, all those wanderers are blind and have no eyes. You alone amongst them have eyes. I have taught and declared some teachings to be categorical and some teachings to be non-categorical. And what are the teachings that I have taught and declared to be non-categorical? The cosmos is eternal. I have taught and declared to be a non-categorical teaching. The statement that the cosmos is not eternal, the cosmos is finite, the cosmos is infinite, the soul and the body are the same, the soul is one thing and the body another. After death, a Tathagata exists. After death, a Tathagata does not exist. After death, a Tathagata both exists and does not exist. After death, a Tathagata neither exists nor does not exist. I have taught and declared to be a non-categorical teaching. And why have I taught and declared those teachings to be non-categorical? Because they are not conducive to the goal, are not conducive to the Dharma, are not basic to the holy life. They don't lead to disenchantment, to dispassion, to cessation, to calm, to direct knowledge, to self-awakening, to unbinding. That's why I have taught and declared them to be non-categorical. And what have I taught and declared to be categorical teachings? The statement that this is stress, I have taught and declared to be a categorical teaching. The statement that this is the origination of stress, this is the cessation of stress, this is the path of practice leading to the cessation of stress, I have taught and declared to be a categorical teaching. And why have I taught and declared these teachings to be categorical? Because they are conducive to the goal, conducive to the Dharma, and basic to the holy life. They lead to disenchantment, to dispassion, to cessation, to calm, to direct knowledge, to self-awakening, to unbinding. That's why I have taught and declared them to be categorical. There are some Brahmins and contemplators with a doctrine and view like this. After death, the self is exclusively happy and free from disease. I approached them and asked them, is it true that you have a doctrine and view like this? After death, the self is exclusively happy and free from disease. When asked this, they replied yes. So I asked them, but do you dwell, having known or seen any exclusively happy world? When asked this, they said no. So I asked them, but have you ever been aware of a self exclusively happy But have you ever been aware of a self exclusively happy for a day or a night, or for half a day or half a night? When asked this, they said no. So I asked them, but do you know that this is the path, this is the practice for the realization of an exclusively happy world? When asked this, they said no. So I asked them, but have you heard the voices of devas reborn in an exclusively happy world, saying, practice well, my dears, practice straightforwardly, my dears, for the realization of an exclusively happy world, because it is through such a practice that we ourselves have been reborn in an exclusively happy world. When asked this, they said no. So what do you think, Potapata? When this is the case, don't the words of those Brahmins and contemplators turn out to be unconvincing? Yes, Master, when this is the case, the words of those Brahmins and contemplators turn out to be unconvincing. Potapata, it's as if a man were to say, I'm in love with the most beautiful woman in this country, and other people were to say to him, well, my benevolent man, this most beautiful woman in this country with whom you are in love, do you know if she's of the warrior caste, the priestly caste, the merchant caste, or the laborer caste? And when asked this, he would say no. Then they would say to him, well then, do you know her name or clan name, whether she's tall, short, or of medium height, whether she's dark, fair, or ruddy skin? Do you know what village or town or city she's from? And when asked this, he should say no. Then they would say to him, so you've never known or seen the woman you're in love with? When asked this, he would say yes. So what do you think, Potapata, when this is the case? Don't the words of that man turn out to be unconvincing? Yes, Master. In the same way, there are some Brahmins and contemplators with a doctrine in view like this. After death, the self is exclusively happy and free from disease. Don't the words of those Brahmins and contemplators turn out to be unconvincing? Yes, Master. Potapata, it's as if a man at a crossroads were to build a staircase for ascending to a palace, and other people were to say to him, well, my benevolent man, this palace for which you are building a staircase, do you know whether it's east, west, north, or south of here, whether it's high, low, or in between? And when asked this, he would say no. Then they would say to him, so you don't know or see the palace for which you are building a staircase? When asked this, he would say yes. So what do you think, Potapata, when this is the case? Don't the words of that man turn out to be unconvincing? Yes, Master. In the same way, there are some Brahmins and contemplators with a doctrine in view like this. After death, the self is exclusively happy and free from disease. Don't the words of those Brahmins and contemplators turn out to be unconvincing? Yes, Master. When this is the case, the words of those Brahmins and contemplators turn out to be unconvincing. Potapata, there are these three acquisitions of the self: the gross acquisition of a self, the mind-made acquisition of a self, and the formless acquisition of a self. And what is the gross acquisition of a self? It possesses a form made up of the four great existence, feeding on physical food. This is the gross acquisition of a self. And what is the mind-made acquisition of a self? Possessed of form, mind-made, complete in all its parts, not inferior in its faculties. This is the mind-made acquisition of a self. And what is the formless acquisition of a self? Formless and made of perception. This is the formless acquisition of a self. I teach the Dharma for abandoning of the gross acquisition of a self, such that when you practice it, defiling mental qualities will be abandoned, bright mental qualities will grow, and you will enter and remain in the culmination and abundance of discernment, having known and recognized it for yourself in the here and now. If the thought should occur to you that when defiling mental qualities are abandoned and bright mental qualities have grown, and one enters and remains in the culmination abundance of discernment, having known and recognized it for oneself in the here and now, one's abiding is stressful, painful. You should not see it in that way. When defiling mental qualities are abandoned and bright mental qualities have grown, and one enters and remains in the culmination and abundance of discernment, having known and realized it for oneself in the here and now, there is joy, rapture, serenity, mindfulness, alertness, and a pleasant, happy abiding. I also teach the Dharma for the abandoning of the mind-made acquisition of a self, for the abandoning of the formless acquisition of a self, such that when you practice it, defiling mental qualities will be abandoned, bright mental qualities will grow, and you will enter and remain in the culmination and abundance of discernment, having known and recognized it for yourself in the here and now. When defiling mental qualities are abandoned and bright mental qualities have grown, and one enters and remains in the culmination and abundance of discernment, having known and recognized it for oneself in the here and now, there is joy, rapture, serenity, mindfulness, alertness, and a pleasant, happy abiding. I also teach the Dharma for the abandoning of the mind-made acquisition of a self, for the abandoning of the formless acquisition of self, In the past, I have been asked, what is the mind-made acquisition of a self, the formless acquisition of a self, for whose abandoning you teach the Dharma? When asked this, I would answer, this friend is that gross acquisition of a self, for whose abandoning I teach the Dharma. What do you think, Potapata? When this is the case, don't those words turn out to be convincing? Yes, Master, when this is the case, those words turn out to be convincing. Potapata, it's as if a man at a crossroads were to build a staircase for ascending to a palace, and other people were to say to him, well, my benevolent man, this palace for which you are building a staircase, do you know whether it's east, west, north, or south of here? Whether it's high, low, or in between? He would say, this, friends, is the palace to which I am building a staircase. The staircase is right under the palace. So what do you think, Potapata? When this is the case, don't the words of that man turn out to be convincing? Yes, Master. In the same way, in the past, I have been asked, what friend is the gross acquisition of a self, the mind-made acquisition of a self, the formless acquisition of a self, for whose abandoning you teach the Dharma? When asked this, I would answer, this friend is that gross acquisition of a self for whose abandoning I teach the Dharma. What do you think, Potapata? When this is the case, don't those words turn out to be convincing? Yes, Master, when this is the case, those words turn out to be convincing. When this was said, Cheetah, the elephant trainer's son, said to the Blessed One, when there is a gross acquisition of a self, is it the case that one's mind-made acquisition of a self and formless acquisition of a self are null and void, and only one's gross acquisition of a self is true? And when there is a mind-made acquisition of a self, is it the case that one's gross acquisition of a self and formless acquisition of a self are null and void, and only one's mind-made acquisition of a self is true? And when there is a formless acquisition of a self, is it the case that one's gross acquisition of a self and mind-made acquisition of a self are null and void, and only one's formless acquisition of a self is true? Cheetah, when there is a gross acquisition of a self, it's not classified either as a mind-made acquisition of a self or as a formless acquisition of a self. It's classified just as a gross acquisition of a self. When there is a mind-made acquisition of a self, it's not classified either as a gross acquisition of a self or as a formless acquisition of a self. It's classified just as a mind-made acquisition of a self. When there is a formless acquisition of a self, it's not classified either as a gross acquisition of a self or as a mind-made acquisition of a self. It is classified just as a formless acquisition of a self. Suppose they were to ask you, did you exist in the past? Did you not exist? Will you exist in the future? Will you not exist? Do you exist now? Do you not exist? Thus asked, how would you answer? Thus asked, Master, I would answer, I existed in the past, I did not exist. I will exist in the future, I will not exist. I exist now, I do not exist. That's how I would answer. Suppose, Cheetah, they were to ask you, whatever your past acquisition of a self, is that alone your true acquisition of self, whilst the future and present ones are null and void? Whatever your future acquisition of a self, is that alone your true acquisition of a self, whilst the past and future ones are null and void? Whatever your present acquisition of a self, is that alone your true acquisition of a self, or whilst the past and future ones are null and void? Thus asked, how would you answer? Thus asked, Master, I would answer, whatever my past acquisition of a self, on that occasion, that alone was my true acquisition of a self, whilst my future and present ones were null and void. Whatever my future acquisition of a self on that occasion, that alone will be my true acquisition of a self, whilst the past and present ones will be null and void. Whatever my present acquisition of a self on that occasion, that alone is my true acquisition of a self, whilst the past and future ones are null and void. In the same way, Chitta, when there is a gross acquisition of a self, it's classified just as a gross acquisition of a self. When there is a mind-made acquisition of a self, when there is a formless acquisition of a self, it's not classified either as a gross acquisition of a self or as a mind-made acquisition of a self. It's classified just as a formless acquisition of a self. Just when milk comes from a cow, curds come from milk, butter from curds, ghee from butter, and the skimmings of ghee from ghee. When there is milk, it's not classified as curds, butter, ghee, or skimmings of ghee. It's classified just as milk. When there are curds, when there is butter, when there is ghee, when there are the skimmings of ghee, they're not classified as milk, curds, ghee, butter, or ghee. They're classified just as the skimmings of ghee. In the same way, when there is a gross acquisition of a self, it's classified just as a gross acquisition of a self. When there is a mind-made acquisition of a self, when there is a formless acquisition of a self, it's not classified either as a gross acquisition of a self or as a mind-made acquisition of a self. It's classified just as a formless acquisition of a self. Chitta, these are the world's designations, the world's expressions, the world's ways of speaking, the world's descriptions with which the Tathagata expresses himself, but without grasping to them. When this was said, Pottapata the Wanderer said to the Blessed One, Magnificent Master Gotama, magnificent, just as if he were to place upright what was overturned, to reveal what was hidden, to show the way to one who was lost, or to carry a lamp into the dark, so that those with eyes could see forms. In the same way has the Master Gotama, through many lines of reasoning, made the Dharma clear. I go to the Master Gotama for refuge, to the Dharma and to the Sangha of monks. May Master Gotama remember me as a lay follower who has gone to him for refuge from this day forward for life. But Chitta, the elephant trainer's son, said to the Blessed One, Magnificent Master Gotama, magnificent, just as if he were to place upright what was overturned. In the same way has Master Gotama, through many lines of reasoning, made the Dharma clear. I go to the Master Gotama for refuge, to the Dharma and to the Sangha of monks. Let me obtain the going forth in the Blessed One's presence. Let me obtain acceptance. So Chitta, the elephant's trainer's son, obtained the going forth in the Blessed One's presence. He obtained acceptance, and not long after his acceptance, dwelling alone, secluded, heedful, ardent, and resolute, he in no long time reached and remained in the supreme goal of the holy life, for which clansmen rightly go forth from home into homelessness, knowing and recognizing it for himself in the here and now. He knew birth is ended, the holy life fulfilled, the task done. There is nothing further for the sake of this world. And thus, Venerable Elephant's trainer's son became another one of the Arahats. The Dhammapada. Attavaga. If one holds oneself dear, one should diligently watch oneself. Let the wise man keep vigil during any of the 3 watches of the night. One should first establish oneself in what is proper, then only should one instruct others. Thus the wise man will not be reproached. One should do what one teaches others to do. If one would train others, one should be well controlled oneself. Difficult indeed is self-control. One truly is the protector of oneself. Who else could the protector be? With oneself fully controlled, one gains a mastery that is hard to gain. The evil a witless man does by himself, born of himself and produced by himself, grinds him as a diamond grinds a hard gem. Just as a single creeper strangles the tree on which it grows, even so a man who is exceedingly depraved harms himself as only an enemy might wish. Easy to do are the things that are bad and harmful to oneself, but exceedingly difficult to do are the things that are benevolent and beneficial. Whoever on account of perverted views scorns the teaching of the perfected ones, the noble and righteous ones, that fool like the bamboo produces fruits only for self-destruction. By oneself is evil done, by oneself is one defiled, by oneself is evil left undone, by oneself is one made pure. Purity and impurity depend on oneself, no one can purify another. Let one not neglect one's own well-being for the sake of another, however great. Clearly understanding one's own well-being, let one be intent upon the benevolent. Gospels, Matthew 23 a 24. Then Jesus said to the crowds and to his disciples, the teachers of the law and the Pharisees sit in Moshe's seat, so you must be careful to do everything they tell you. But do not do what they do, for they do not practice what they preach. They tie up heavy, cumbersome loads and put them on other people's shoulders, but they themselves are not willing to lift a finger to move them. Everything they do is done for people to see. They make their phylacteries wide and the tassels of their garments long. They love the place of honor at banquets and the most important seats in the synagogues. They love to be greeted with respect in the marketplaces and to be called rabbi by others. But you are not to be called rabbi, for you have one teacher, and you are all brothers. And you are all brothers. And do not call anyone on earth far, for you have one Creator, and God is in heaven. Nor are you to be called instructors, for you have one instructor, the Messiah. The greatest amongst you will be your servant. For those who exalt themselves will be humbled, and those who humble themselves will be exalted. Woe to you, teachers of the law and Pharisees, you hypocrites! You shut the door of the sovereignty of heaven in people's faces. You yourselves do not enter, nor will you let those enter who are trying to. Woe to you, teachers of the law and Pharisees, you hypocrites! You travel over land and sea to win a single convert, and when you have succeeded, you make them twice as much a child of hell as you are. Woe to you, blind guides! You say, if anyone swears by the temple, it means nothing, but anyone who swears by the gold of the temple is bound by that oath. You blind fools, which is greater, the gold or the temple that makes the gold sacred? You also say, if anyone swears by the altar, it means nothing, but anyone who swears by the gift on the altar is bound by that oath. You blind men, which is greater, the gift or the altar that makes the gift sacred? Therefore, anyone who swears by the altar swears by it and by everything on it, and anyone who swears by the temple swears by it and by the one who dwells in it. And anyone who swears by heaven swears by God's throne and by the one who sits on it. Woe to you, teachers of the law and Pharisees, you hypocrites! You give a tenth of your spices, mint, dill, and cumin, but you have neglected the further important matters of the law, justice, mercy, and faithfulness. You should have practiced the latter without neglecting the former. You blind guides! You strain out a gnat but swallow a camel. Woe to you, teachers of the law and Pharisees, you hypocrites! You clean the outside of the cup and dish, but inside they are full of greed and self-indulgence. Blind Pharisee, first clean the inside of the cup and dish, and then the outside also will be clean. Woe to you, teachers of the law and Pharisees, you hypocrites! You are like whitewashed tombs, which look beautiful on the outside, but on the inside are full of the bones of the dead and everything unclean. In the same way, on the outside you appear to people as righteous, but on the inside you are full of hypocrisy and wickedness. Woe to you, teachers of the law and Pharisees, you hypocrites! You build tombs for the prophets and decorate the graves of the righteous. And you say, if we had lived in the days of our ancestors, we would not have taken part with them in shedding the blood of the prophets. So you testify against yourselves that you are the descendants of those who murdered the prophets. Go ahead then and complete what your ancestors started. You snakes, you brood of vipers, how will you escape being condemned to hell? Therefore I am sending you prophets and sages and teachers. Some of them you will kill and crucify, others you will flog in your synagogues and pursue from town to town. And so upon you will come all the righteous blood that has been shed on earth, from the blood of righteous Abel to the blood of Zechariah, son of Berechiah, whom you murdered between the temple and the altar. Truly I tell you, all this will come on this generation. Yerushalayim, Yerushalayim, you who kill the prophets and stone those sent to you, how often I have longed to gather your children in, as a hen gathers her chicks under her wings, and you were not willing. Look, your house is left to you desolate. For I tell you, you will not see me again until you say, blessed is he who comes in the name of God. Jesus left the temple and was walking away with his disciples, when his disciples came up to him to call his attention to its buildings. Do you see all these things? He asked. Truly I tell you, not one stone here will be left on another, every one will be thrown down. As Jesus was sitting on the Mount of Olives, the disciples came to him privately. Tell us, they said, when will this happen, and what will be the sign of your coming and of the end of the age? Jesus answered, watch out that no one deceives you, for many will come in my name, claiming I am the Messiah, and will deceive many. You will hear of wars and rumors of wars, but see to it that you are not alarmed. Such things must happen, but the end is still to come. Nation will rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom. There will be famines and earthquakes in various places. All these are the beginning of the birth pains. Then you will be handed over to be persecuted and put to death, and you will be hated by all nations because of me. At that time many will turn away from the faith and will betray and hate each other. And many false prophets will appear and deceive many people. Because of the increase of wickedness, the love of most will grow cold. but the one who stands firm to the end will be saved. And this gospel of the sovereignty will be preached in the whole world as a testimony to all nations, and then the end will come. So when you see standing in the holy place the abomination that causes desolation spoken of through the prophet Daniel, let the reader understand. Then let those who are in Judea flee to the mountains. Let no one on the housetop go down to take anything out of the house. Let no one in the field go back to get their cloak. How dreadful it will be in those days for pregnant women and nursing Moors. Pray that your flight will not take place in winter or on Shabbat, for then there will be great distress, unequaled from the beginning of the world until now, and never to be equaled again. If those days had not been cut short, no one would survive, but for the sake of the elect, those days will be shortened. At that time, if anyone says to you, "Look, here is the Messiah," or "There he is," do not believe it. For false messiahs and false prophets will appear and perform great signs and wonders to deceive, if possible, even the elect. See, I have told you ahead of time. So if anyone tells you, "Then there he is out in the wilderness," do not go out, or "Here he is in the inner rooms," do not believe it. For as lightning that comes from the east is visible even in the west, so will be the coming of the Son of Man. Wherever there is a carcass, there the vultures will gather. Immediately after the distress of those days, the soleil will be darkened, and the moon will not give its light. The stars will fall from the sky, and the heavenly bodies will be shaken. Then will appear the sign of the Son of Man in heaven, and then all the peoples of the earth will grieve when they see the Son of Man coming on the clouds of heaven with power and great glory. And he will send his angels with a loud trumpet call, and they will gather his elect from the four winds, from one end of the heavens to the other. Now learn this lesson from the fig tree. As soon as its twigs get tender and its leaves come out, you know that summer is near. Even so, when you see all these things, you know that it is near, right at the door. Truly I tell you, this generation will certainly not pass away until all these things have happened. Heaven and earth will pass away, but my words will never pass away. But about that day or hour no one knows, not even the angels in heaven, nor the Son, but only the Creator. As it was in the days of Noah, so it will be at the coming of the Son of Man. For in the days before the flood, people were eating and drinking, marrying and giving in marriage, up to the day Noah entered the ark. And they knew nothing about what would happen until the flood came and took them all away. That is how it will be at the coming of the Son of Man. 2 men will be in the field, one will be taken and the other left. 2 women will be grinding with a handmill, one will be taken and the other left. Therefore keep watch, because you do not know on what day your master will come. But understand this, if the owner of the house had known at what time of the night the thief was coming, he would have kept watch and would not have let his house be broken into. So you also must be ready, because the Son of Man will come at an hour when you do not expect him. Who then is the faithful and wise servant, whom the master has put in charge of the servants in his house to give them their food at the proper time? It will be beneficial for that servant whose master finds him doing so when he returns. Truly I tell you, he will put him in charge of all his possessions. But suppose that servant is wicked and says to himself, "My master is staying away a long time," and he then begins to beat his fellow servants and to eat and drink with drunkards. The master of that servant will come on a day when he does not expect him, and at an hour he is not aware of. He will cut him to portions and assign him a place with the hypocrites, where there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. Quran, Surah Yusuf. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. In the name of Allah, most gracious, most merciful. Alif Lam Ra. These are the symbols or verses of the perspicuous book. We have sent it down as an Arabic Quran in order that ye may learn wisdom. We do relate unto thee the most beautiful of stories, in that we reveal to thee this portion of the Quran. Before this thou too was amongst those who knew it not. Behold, Yusuf said to his Far, O my Far, I did see 11 stars, and the soleil and the moon, I saw them prostrate themselves to me. Said the Far, My dear little son, relate not thy vision to thy brothers, lest they concoct a plot against thee, for Satan is to man an avowed enemy. Thus will thy Lord choose thee and teach thee the interpretation of stories and events, and perfect Allah's favor to thee and to the posterity of Yaakov, even as Allah perfected it to thy Fars, Abraham and Yitzhak, aforetime. For Allah is full of knowledge and wisdom. Verily, in Yosef and his brethren are signs or symbols for seekers after truth. They said, Truly Yosef and his brothers are loved further by our Far than we. Truly Yosef and his brother are loved further by our Far than we. but we are a holy body. Truly our father is obviously wondering in his mind. Slay ye Joseph, or cast him out to some unknown land, that so the favor of your father may be given to you alone. There will be time enough for you to be righteous after that. Said one of them, Slay not Joseph, but if ye must do something, throw him down to the bottom of the well. He will be picked up by some caravan of travelers. They said, O our father, why dost thou not trust us with Joseph, seeing we are indeed his sincere well-wishers? Send him with us mañana to enjoy himself and play, and we shall take every care of him. Yaakov said, Truly it saddens me that ye should take him away. I fear lest the wolf should devour him, whilst ye attend not to him. They said, If the wolf were to devour him whilst we are so large a party, then should we indeed first have perished ourselves. So they did take him away, and they all agreed to throw him down to the bottom of the well. And we put into his heart this message: Of a surety thou shalt one day tell them the truth of this their affair, whilst they know thee not. Then they came to their father in the early part of the night, weeping. They said, O our father, we went racing with one another, and left Joseph with our things, and the wolf devoured him. But thou wilt never believe us, even though we tell the truth. They stained his shirt with false blood. He said, Nay, but your minds have made up a tale that may pass with you. For me, patience is most fitting. Against that which ye assert, it is Allah alone whose help can be sought. Then there came a caravan of travelers. They sent their water carrier for water, and let down his bucket into the well. He said, Ah, there, benevolent news. Here is a fine young man. So they concealed him as a treasure, but Allah knoweth well all that they do. The brethren sold him for a miserable price, for a few dirhams, counted out. In such low estimation did they hold him. The man in Egypt who bought him said to his wife, Make his stay amongst us honorable. Maybe he will bring us much benefit, or we shall adopt him as a son. Thus did we establish Joseph in the land, that we might teach him the interpretation of stories and events. And Allah hath full power and control over Allah's affairs, but most amongst mankind know it not. When Joseph attained his full manhood, we gave him power and knowledge. Thus do we reward those who do right. But she in whose house he was sought to seduce him from his true self. She fastened the doors and said, Now come thou, dear one. He said, Allah forbid. Truly thy husband is my master. He made my sojourn agreeable. Truly to no benefit comes those who do wrong. And with passion did she desire him, and he would have desired her, but that he saw the evidence of his Lord. Thus did we order that we might turn away from him all evil and shameful deeds, for he was one of our servants, sincere and purified. So they both raced each other to the door, and she tore his shirt from the back. They both found her master near the door. She said, What is the fitting punishment for one who formed an evil design against thy wife, but prison or a grievous chastisement? He said, It was she that sought to seduce me from my true self. And one of her household said this, and bore witness thus: If it be that his shirt is rent from the front, then is her tale true, and he is a liar. But if it be that his shirt is torn from the back, then is she the liar, and he is telling the truth. So when he saw his shirt, that it was torn at the back, her husband said, Behold, it is the snare of you women. Truly mighty is your snare. O Joseph, pass this over. O wife, ask forgiveness for thy sin, for truly thou hast been at fault. Lady said in the city, The wife of the great Aziz is seeking to seduce her slave from his true self. Truly hath he inspired her with violent love. We see she is evidently going astray. When she heard of their malicious talk, she sent for them and prepared a banquet for them. She gave each of them a knife, and she said to Joseph, Come out before them. When they saw him, they did extol him, and in their amazement cut their hands. They said, Allah preserve us. No living being is this. This is none other than a noble angel. She said, There before you is the man about whom ye did blame me. I did seek to seduce him from his true self, but he did firmly save himself guiltless. And now if he doth not my bidding, he shall certainly be cast into prison, and what is further be of the company of the vilest. He said, O my Lord, the prison is further to my liking than that to which they invite me. Unless thou turn away their snare from me, I should in my youthful folly feel inclined towards them, and join the ranks of the ignorant. So his Lord hearkened to him in his prayer, and turned away from him their snare. For verily Allah heareth and knoweth all things. Then it occurred to the men, after they had seen the signs, that it was best to imprison him for a time. Now with him there came into the prison 2 young men. Said one of them, I see myself in a dream pressing wine. Said the other, I see myself in a dream carrying bread on my head, and birds are eating thereof. Tell us, they said, the truth and meaning of thereof, for we see thou art one that doth benevolence to all. He said, Before any food comes in due course to feed either of you, I will surely reveal to you the truth and meaning of this ere it befall you. That is part of the duty which my Lord hath taught me. I assure you, abandoned the ways of a people that believe not in the law, and that even deny the hereafter. And I follow the ways of my fathers, Abraham, Yitzhak, and Yaakov, and never could we attribute any partners whatever to Allah. That comes of the grace of Allah to us and to mankind, yet most men are not grateful. Of my two companions of the prison, I ask you, are many deities differing amongst themselves better, or the one Allah, supreme and irresistible? If not Allah, you worship nothing but names which ye have named, ye and your fathers, for which Allah hath set down no authority. The command is for none but Allah. Allah hath commanded that you worship none but Allah. That is the right religion, but most men understand not. Of my two companions of the prison, as to one of you, he will pour out the wine for his master to drink. As for the other, he will hang from the cross, and the birds will eat from off his head. So hath been decreed the matter whereof ye twain do inquire. And of the two, to that one whom he considered about to be saved, he said, mention me to thy master. But Satan made him forget to mention him to his master, and Joseph lingered in prison a few additional years. The king of Egypt said, I do see in a vision 7 fat kine, whom 7 lean ones devour, and 7 green ears of corn, and 7 others withered. O ye chiefs, expound to me my vision, if it be that ye can interpret visions. They said, a confused medley of dreams, and we are not skilled in the interpretation of dreams. But the man who had been released, one of the two who had been in prison, and who now bethought him after so long a space of time, said, I will tell you the truth of his interpretation. Send ye me therefore. O Yosef, he said, O man of truth, expound to us the dream of 7 fat kine, whom 7 lean ones devour, and of 7 green ears of corn, and 7 others withered, that I may return to the people, and that they may understand. Yosef said, for 7 years shall ye diligently sow, as is your wont, and the harvest that ye reap, ye shall leave them in the ear, except a little, of which ye shall eat. Then will come after that period 7 dreadful years, which will devour what ye shall have laid by in advance for them, all except a little which ye shall have specially guarded. Then will come after that period a year in which the people will have abundant water, and in which they will press wine and oil. So the king said, bring ye him unto me. But when the messenger came to him, Joseph said, go thou back to thy master, and ask him, what is the state of mind of the ladies who cut their hands? For my Lord is certainly well aware of their snare. The king said to the ladies, what was your affair when ye did seek to seduce Joseph from his true self? The lady said, Allah preserve us, no evil know we against him. Said the Aziz's wife, now is the truth made manifest to all. It was I who sought to seduce him from his true self. He is indeed of those who are ever true and virtuous. This say I, in order that he may know that I have never been false to him in his absence, and that Allah will never guide the snare of the false ones. Nor do I absolve my own self of blame. The human soul is certainly prone to evil, unless my Lord do bestow Allah's mercy, but surely my Lord is all forgiving, most merciful. So the king said, bring him unto me. I will take him specially to serve about my own person. Therefore, when he had spoken to him, he said, be assured this day thou art before our own presence, with rank firmly established and fidelity fully proved. Joseph said, set me over the storehouses of the land. I will indeed guard them, as one that knows their importance. Thus did we give established power to Joseph in the land to take possession therein, as when or where he pleased. We bestow of our mercy on whom we please, and we suffer not to be lost the reward of those who do benevolence. But verily the reward of the hereafter is best for those who believe and are constant in righteousness. Then came Joseph's brethren, they entered his presence, and he knew them, but they knew him not. And when he had furnished them forth with provisions suitable for them, he said, bring unto me a brother ye have, of the same far as yourselves, but a different more. See ye not that I pay out full measure, and that I do provide the best hospitality? Now if you bring him not to me, ye shall have no measure of corn from me, nor shall ye even come near me. They said, we shall certainly seek to get our wish about him from his far. Indeed, we shall do it. And Joseph told his servants to put their stock in trade with which they had bartered into their saddlebags, so they should know it only when they returned to their people, in order that they might come back. Now when they returned to their far, they said, O our far, no further measure of grain shall we get unless we take our brother. So send our brother with us, that we may get our measure, and we will indeed take every care of him. He said, shall I trust you with him with any result other than when I trusted you with his brother before time? But Allah is the best to take care of him, and Allah is the most merciful of those who show mercy. When they opened their baggage, they found their stock and trade had been returned to them. They said, O our Father, what further can we desire? This our stock and trade has been returned to us, so we shall get further food for our family. We shall take care of our brother and add at the same time a full camel's load of grain to our provisions. This is but a small quantity. Yaakov said, Never will I send him with you until ye swear a solemn oath to me in Allah's name that you will be sure to bring him back to me unless you are yourselves hemmed in and made powerless. And when they had sworn their solemn oath, he said, Over all that we say, be Allah the witness and guardian. Further he said, O my sons, enter not all by one gate, enter ye by different gates, not that I can benefit you aught against Allah with my advice. None can command except Allah. On Allah do I put my trust, and let all that trust put their trust on Allah. And when they entered in the manner their Far had enjoined, it did not benefit them in the least against the plan of Allah. It was but a necessity of Yaakov's soul, which he discharged, for he was by our instruction full of knowledge and experience, but most men know not. Now when they came into Joseph's presence, he received his full brother to stay with him. He said to him, Behold, I am thy own brother, so grieve not at aught of their doings. At length, when he had furnished them forth with provisions suitable for them, he put the drinking cup into his brother's saddlebag, then shouted out a crier, O ye in the caravan, behold, ye are thieves without doubt. They said, turning towards them, What is it that ye miss? They said, We miss the great beaker of the king. For him who produces it is the reward of a camel load. I will be bound by it. The brother said, By Allah, well, ye know that we came not to make mischief in the land, we are no thieves. And the Egyptian said, What then shall be the penalty of this, if ye are proved to have lied? They said, The penalty should be that he in whose saddlebag is found should be held as bondman to atone for the crime. Thus it is we punish the wrongdoers. So he began the search with their baggage before he came to the baggage of his brother. At length he brought it out of his brother's baggage. Thus did we plan for Yosef. He could not take his brother by the law of the king, except that Allah willed it so. We raised to degrees of wisdom whom we please, but overall endued with knowledge is one, the all-knowing. They said, If he steals, there was a brother of his who did steal before him. But these things did Yosef keep locked in his heart, revealing not the secrets to them. He simply said to himself, Ye are the worst situated, and Allah knoweth best the truth of what ye assert. They said, O exalted one, behold, he has a far aged and venerable who will grieve for him. So take one of us in his place, for we see that thou art gracious in doing benevolence. He said, Allah forbid that we take other than him with whom we found our property. Indeed, if we did so, we should be acting wrongfully. Now when they saw no hope of his yielding, they held a conference in private. The leader amongst them said, Know ye not that your father did take an oath from you in Allah's name, and how before this ye did fail in your duty with Yosef? Therefore will I not leave this land until my father permits me, or Allah commands me, and Allah is the best to command. Turn ye back to your father and say, O our father, behold, thy son committed theft. We bear witness only to what we know, and we could not well guard against the unseen. Ask at the town where we have been and the caravan in which we return, and you will find we are indeed telling the truth. Yaakov says, Nay, but ye have yourselves contrived a story beneficial enough for you. So patience is most fitting for me. Maybe Allah will bring them back all to me in the end, for Allah is indeed full of knowledge and wisdom. And he turned away from them and said, How great is my grief for Yosef. And his eyes became white with sorrow, and he fell into silent melancholy. They said, By Allah, never wilt thou cease to remember Yosef until thou reach the last extremity of illness, or until thou die. He said, I only complain of my distraction and anguish to Allah, and I know from Allah that which ye know not. O my sons, go ye and inquire about Yosef and his brother, and never give up hope of Allah's soothing mercy. Truly no one despairs of Allah's soothing mercy except those who have no faith. Then when they came back into Joseph's presence, they said, O exalted one, distress has seized us and our family. We have now brought but scanty capital. So pay us full measure, we pray thee, and treat it as charity to us, for Allah doth reward the charitable. He said, Know ye how ye dealt with Joseph and his brother, not knowing what ye were doing? They said, Art thou indeed Joseph? He said, I am Joseph, and this is my brother. Allah has indeed been gracious to us all. Behold, he that is righteous and patient, never will Allah suffer the reward to be lost of those who do right. They said, By Allah, indeed has Allah preferred thee above us, and we certainly have been guilty of sin. He said, This day let no approach be cast on you. Allah will forgive you, and Allah is the most merciful of those who show mercy. Go with this my shirt, and cast it over the face of my father. He will come to see clearly. Then come ye here to me together with all your family. When the caravan left Egypt, their father said, I do indeed scent the presence of Joseph. Nay, think me not a dotard. They said, By Allah, truly thou art in thine old wandering mind. Then when the bearer of the benevolent news came, he cast the shirt over his face, and he forthwith regained clear sight. He said, Did I not say to you, I know from Allah that which ye know not? They said, O our father, ask for us forgiveness for our sins, for we were truly at fault. He said, Soon will I ask my Lord for forgiveness for you, for Allah is indeed all forgiving, most merciful. Then when they entered the presence of Joseph, he provided a home for his parents with himself, and said, Enter ye Egypt all in safety, if it please Allah. And he raised his parents high on the throne of dignity, and they fell down in prostration all before him. And he said, O my father, this is the fulfillment of my vision of old. Allah hath made it come true. Allah was indeed benevolent to me when Allah took me out of prison and brought you all here out of the desert. Even after Satan had sown enmity between me and my brothers, verily my Lord understandeth best the mysteries of all that Allah planneth to do. For verily Allah is full of knowledge and wisdom. O my Lord, thou hast indeed bestowed on me some power, and taught me something of the interpretation of dreams and events. O thou creator of the heavens and the earth, thou art my protector in this world and in the hereafter. Take thou my soul at death as one submitting to thy will as a Muslim, and unite me with the righteous. Such is one of the stories of what happened unseen, which we revealed by inspiration unto thee, nor wast thou present with them when they concerted their plans together in the presence of weaving their plots. Yet no faith will the greater part of mankind have, however ardently thou dost desire it. And no reward dost thou ask of them for this. It is no less than a message for all creatures. And how many signs in the heavens and the earth do they pass by, yet they turn their faces away from them. And most of them believe not in Allah, without associating others as partners with Allah. Do they then feel secure from the coming against them of the covering veil of the wrath of Allah, or of the coming against them of the final hour all of a sudden, whilst they perceive not? Say thou, This is my way, I do invite unto Allah, on evidence clear as the seeing with one's eyes, I and whoever follows me. Glory to Allah, and never will I join deities with Allah. Nor did we send before thee as apostles any but men whom we did inspire, men living in human habitations. Do they not travel through the earth and see what was the end of those before them? But the home of the hereafter is best for those who do right. Will ye not then understand? Respite will be granted until when the apostles give up hope of their people and come to think that they were treated as liars. There reaches them our help, and those whom we will are delivered into safety, but never will be warded off our punishment from those who are in sin. There is in their stories instruction for men endued with understanding. It is not a tale invented, but a confirmation of what went before it, a detailed exposition of all things, and a guide and a mercy to any such as believe. Sri Guru Granth Sahib, verse 2 a 11. It is according to Vaheguru's ordinance that all creation occurs, but this order or will cannot be described. All creatures are born in obedience to Vaheguru's order, and honor is found only by obeying this order or will. It is in accordance with Vaheguru's will that some become benevolent and some bad. It is Vaheguru's judgment based on their past deeds that some suffer pain whilst others enjoy bliss. By Vaheguru's command, some receive Vaheguru's blessings whilst others are made to go through perpetual cycles of birth and death. Everything and everyone is controlled by Vaheguru's inescapable command. If this truth were recognized that everything happens according to Vaheguru's will and design, then no one would utter any words out of ego. Whosoever has the ability to do so sings of Vaheguru's powers. Some sing Vaheguru's praises, by recognizing that all gifts of life are signs of Vaheguru's grace. Some sing Vaheguru's praises by reflecting on Vaheguru's qualities and glories. Some sing Vaheguru's praises by reflecting on the difficult divine knowledge they have acquired through their education. Some sing Vaheguru's praises by acknowledging that it is Vaheguru who both creates and destroys. Some sing that Vaheguru takes away life and then gives it again in another form. One says Vaheguru appears at a distance, whilst another praises Vaheguru's closeness. Though millions praise Vaheguru, there are always further merits that might be described. The giver gives continuously even when those who receive grow tired of receiving. In this way, creatures have been consuming from Vaheguru for eons. By Vaheguru's command, the commander is running the universe on a specific path, and O Nanak, the creator, is carefree, delighting in Vaheguru's creation. O my friends, the Master and Vaheguru's name are eternal. Vaheguru's language is that of limitless love. When we beg of Vaheguru for anything, the benevolent Vaheguru bestows those gifts upon us. But the question arises, what should we offer in return for this glimpse into Vaheguru's court? What words should we utter that Vaheguru might love us further? The answer is that in the ambrosial hours of matin, we should meditate on Vaheguru's name and reflect on Vaheguru's greatness. We should remember that it is only through benevolent deeds that we are blessed with the cloak of human form, and only through Vaheguru's grace do we obtain salvation. O Nanak, this is how we come to know that the Eternal Master is everything, all by Vaheguru's self. Vaheguru cannot be established like an idol, nor can be created like a thing. The Immaculate Vaheguru has come into existence by Vaheguru's self. Those who have served and remembered Vaheguru, they have obtained honor. Therefore, O Nanak, we should sing praises of that Vaheguru who is the treasure of excellences. We should sing of Vaheguru, listen to Vaheguru's praise, and enshrine Vaheguru's love in our heart. One who does this dispels his or her sorrow and finds pleasure. Through the Guru, we understand that Vaheguru is all around. We hear Vaheguru's mystic tune, obtain divine knowledge, and realize that the Guru Vaheguru pervades everywhere. We understand that the Guru is Shiva, the celestial nature of destruction, is Vishnu, the celestial nature of sustenance, and Brahma, the celestial nature of creation, and is Parvata, Shiva's wife. The Guru Vaheguru is limitless. Even if I knew about Vaheguru, I would not say, because Vaheguru cannot be described. So I pray to Vaheguru and say, O Guru, bless me with this understanding that there is only one giver for all beings, and may I never forget Vaheguru. I will obey that pilgrimage sites only if it pleases Vaheguru. Without pleasing Vaheguru, what is the utilization of such ritualistic bathing? I see that in the entire world one cannot receive anything without it being in one's destiny. Yet we can find spiritual jewels within our own mind if we listen to just one teaching of the true Guru. Therefore, I only pray, O Guru, make me understand this one thing, that there is one and only one provider of all beings, and may I never forget Vaheguru. Even if one were to lengthen one's life by 4 yugas, eons, or 10 times further, and were known in the 9 regions of the universe and followed by all, and his or his honors are sung all over the world, still no one would care about that person without the grace of Vaheguru. Such a person would be treated like the most ignominious worm and the worst sinner. It is Vaheguru we should try to please, because, O Nanak, it is Vaheguru who confers merits on the meritless and bestows further merit on the already meritorious ones. I cannot think of anyone who can grant any merit to that Vaheguru. By listening to Vaheguru's Nam, even ordinary persons obtain the status of siddhas, yogis with miraculous powers, peers, celestial beings, and Nats. By listening to Nam, one understands the mystery of the earth and the true bull of force, which supports earth and the sky. In fact, by listening to Nam, one attains knowledge about all the continents, worlds, and other regions. By listening to Nam, even the fear of death cannot scare a person. Therefore, when Nanak, the devotees of Vaiguru always remain in a state of bliss. In short, understanding Vaiguru's Nam destroys all one's sorrows and sins. By listening to Vaiguru's Nam, the exalted status of primal celestial beings such as Shiva, Brahma, and Indira is attained. By listening to Vaiguru's Nam, an evil person begins praising Vaheguru. By listening to Vaheguru's Nam, one starts understanding the secrets of uniting with Vaheguru and the secrets of the human body. By listening, one understands the message of holy books, including Shastras, Smritis, and Vedas. Through such listening, O Nanak, the devotees of Vaheguru always remain in a state of bliss. By listening attentively to Vaheguru's Nam, we acquire the virtues of truthfulness, contentment, and divine knowledge. By listening to Nam, we are so purified as if we have bathed at all the 68 traditional holy places. When we listen to and read of Vaheguru's praise or Nam, we receive true honor. By listening to Vaheguru's praise, Nam, our mind is effortlessly attuned to meditation. O Nanak, the devotees of Vaheguru always enjoy a state of bliss. By listening to Nam, all their sins and maladies are destroyed. By listening to Nam, ordinary persons acquire such high merits that they could dive deep into oceans of virtues. By listening to Nam, one obtains the status of sheikhs and peers and kings. By listening to Nam, persons blinded by ignorance discover the path to Vaheguru. By listening, we understand the mysteries of the unfathomable ocean of worldliness. O Nanak, the devotees always enjoy a state of bliss, and by listening to Nam, their sufferings and sins are destroyed. Alhamdulillah, Ar-Rahmani Ar-Rahim. Allah Wabham. Dao ka dao, fe chong dao, min ka min, fe chong min. Ja Rastafari. Deus nos te quies in cele santo fakito nomentum. Vaheguru sanam. Baruch ata Elohim Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kasanu b'mitzotav v'tzivaonu l'sukber v'aytorah. Amen. Baruch ata Elohim Eloheinu melech haolam, barei pori agafem. Amen. Kyrie eleison. Sevomastu sabajikatehi, sabe sata bhavantu sukhidata. Vagabiyam. Aquaba upendo na amalim. Fikiri na salami. Chinta dam para me and libo for me womanjikam. Ubuntu shabono fakithkam. Shishem. Como sinira domo arigato. Pilama yellow wogan toko dokashingun. Gomanagan. God, we thank you for all that you bless us. Ata jamya yata afanami. Mado. Aho. Om shanti shanti shanti. Namaste, Assalamu alaikum, Shalom, Mir, Satnam, Jai Janendra, Jai Jan, Adios, Jai Chaklis, Sayonara, Metta Samadhi, Eshwaso, Agape Ke Irini, Esempe na Asamuje, Kere Ufred. Love and peace, happiness, liberation.